Hey everyone, and welcome to the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. Reuben Frank couldn't make this episode, but didn't want to leave you guys without a podcast, so we called on our good friend Barrett Brooks, co-host, or I guess the host of Birds Huddle, because you're the constant on that show. How you doing, Barrett?
I'm good, man. Sometimes, man, it's just been a very, very rough 2 weeks, bro. Very rough 2 weeks.
It has been. I landed in Dallas, and I half expected to see the city on fire and people jumping out of buildings, and it wasn't quite that bad. It happens sometimes. Sometimes you get your teeth kicked in a little bit.
Right. Sometimes the bully comes up and makes you like it, and they made us like it, man. They beat up on us, man, and that's the most disheartening part about this game. It'll make you feel real human for the most part. We're squawking around for 10 weeks, and then we get punched in the mouth, and two bullies into the block, and they beat up on us. So how do you react from this point on? I said that last week. How do we react by getting punched in the mouth last week by the 49ers? We got a second dose of it with Dallas. How do we proceed forward?
Yeah, it's a big question, and we have a bunch of stuff to talk about. We heard from Nick Sirianni on Tuesday afternoon, our first time speaking with him since right after the game. So we'll go through some of what he said. We'll talk about the offense, the defense. But, Barrett, I haven't talked to you since the end of this game. I had a chance to go back, watch the tape a little bit. Some things kind of surprised me. A lot of it was what I expected to see, honestly. From your perspective, what do you think were some of the biggest factors, not just for the loss, but the way they lost?
I think it's more so not being fundamentally sound. When I say fundamentals, I talked to our boss here, and he's like, well, people don't really understand what you mean by fundamentals. Well, let me break down what fundamental is to me. Fundamentals are things that you do that become second nature to you because you've done it so much and it's the right thing to do. Like number one, tackling. Tackling shouldn't be something that you just forget about. Tackling is something you work on constantly. Becomes second. It becomes like, breathing. It's one of those type of functions. You got to be able to tackle on the defensive side of the ball. Offensive lineman blocking, having their base underneath them. Making sure you don't jump off sides. Those are all things that are fundamentals that you shouldn't have to think about. It should just already be ingrained in you. Running backs, quarterbacks, tight ends, everybody that carries the ball, securing the ball when you're about to get tackled. You got to secure it. You got to make sure you don't fumble. Those are fundamental things you're taught. Jalen, working the pocket. Fundamentally, he has to make sure that, he feels things a little better. I mean, just little normal things like that. Defensive lineman, once you get past you got a gap responsibility, knowing that gap, staying in that gap, and don't jump trying to make a play for something else. Playing fundamentally sound. Be in your gap because that's where you're supposed to be. Don't try to jump, swim, get to the outside and try to beat somebody back in. By that time, the running back's put through a hole already. I saw that a lot, especially from our young guys. So those are things that are fundamentals that you can't go through the season and think that you can, not work on those things, not cross your T's and dot your I's, not focus on the little things that got you where you are, fundamental things that got you 10 wins. Those are the little things you got to get back to.
It's funny as you're saying that. I'm pretty fresh off the rewatch, so I'm thinking about instances in my mind where all of those issues popped up, and there are moments in that game where I think scheme was a problem, and I think that there's opportunity on both sides of the ball to do a better job from a coaching perspective. But you're right,
Absolutely.
like there were fundamental mistakes in there. You mentioned the tackling. Part of that is angles and taking the right angle to the ball. I think there were some issues.
Or being in the gap you're supposed to be in, so that angle's you're already there.
Exactly. And then another thing that really stood out to me, and this is one that probably annoys the heck out of Nick Sirianni, are like the little things on running routes, like all these rub routes that they're just not good at. You saw A.J. Brown. There were two instances with A.J. who, look, he's their best player on offense. He's incredible, but that early play got wiped out to Dallas Goedert because he went a little too hard. And then a little bit later, that 4th and 8 on that gotta have it. I mean, that's a pick route too. And he doesn't he's too deep. He's not shallow enough, and he doesn't get in the way of Stephon Gilmore enough. And so it's like these little tiny things, especially at that position. Gosh, that has to bug Nick Sirianni.
And I mean, it has to. Just little things like that, man. I mean, even understanding, where you're supposed to be at in your route. Understanding that, all right, when we're running the rock, knowing you got a double team, get off to the second level, those things are working well. But then not sticking to running the ball. You can't just abandon a run so early, and I hate to be pessimistic, but for the first time, that first drive, when Jalen fumbled the ball, I knew it was over after that.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy because it felt like a game where they're going to have to chase points.
Yep.
And they were cooking a little bit on that drive. They were overcoming some of the mistakes, and they looked good offensively. And once they got behind, they just never caught up.
Well, I mean, you can't expect, because I literally thought that there's no way that Dallas could come in and duplicate what they did the last game. I thought we got their best. There's no way they could have played better than they played that last game. And what do? They play better than they did in the first game. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me. If you'd have told me that we'd hold CeeDee Lamb to under 75 yards, Ferguson under 75 yards, their running backs, we, for the most part, kept their starting running back under 100 yards. I'm like, yeah, we win that game. We win that game all day. And we got our butts kicked. They handed it to us, man, because they just outphysically. You heard what DeMarcus Lawrence said. He said, once you hit them again and hit them again, and then they come back, then keep on hitting them. I mean, that's what they did. That's exactly what they did. And and I've been screaming for the past 3 weeks and watching their offense. I don't know, our former coworker Derek Gunn reported that they said that the offense is becoming predictable, and then they talked about how the routes on the outside are taking too long. I've been screaming for the past 3 weeks that we have to go out there and run a dink and dunk offense. Get the ball in our playmakers' hands earlier. You can't drop back 7 yards every single play and expect your offensive line, who are doing a damn good job, to pass block that long. I mean, 3.5, 4 seconds, man, come on now. I mean, they're not Supermen. Although, 2 guys on the offensive line have S's on their chest, it's still not something you can sustain, man. You cannot do that. We have our routes on the outside are just long developing routes, and you just can't do that. I mean, defensive linemen are too good. Marcus Parsons and LaMarcus Lawrence are too good that you can think you can do that. And that's a problem. We got to go into the quick game. We know, and I heard Nick Sirianni say, well, we don't think that we can sustain an offense by dinking and dunking and going down the field methodically. What? Are you crazy? I mean, he really said, I couldn't believe he said that.
Yeah, I mean, Nick is really big on explosive plays. And look, for the most part, I don't think anyone thinks this is a complex offense, right?
Right.
It's not.
Right,
it's a pretty simple offense. They're trusting their playmakers to make plays. And a lot of times it works because they have really good players. Like you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And for the most part, those guys are going to win their one-on-ones. In this game, it wasn't enough because those guys didn't play particularly well. I know the numbers were okay by the end of it, but, I mean, they dropped passes. And it's like if you don't hit those explosives the way you want, then all of a sudden you don't have enough to get out of the hole.
Exactly. I don't know how many, you got to have a lot of 3rd and 10 plays to play in this offense. And we can't sustain that. You can't sustain 3rd and 2 because you've thrown a slant play to AJ. And AJ, takes it, Debo's the cornerback, and takes it up the field 8 yards. You can sustain that. You can sustain Smitty going and running a comeback route, and he catches it at 10, and they tackle him at 9. You can go, 2nd and 1. You can sustain those type of drives, but you cannot sustain where 1, 2, 3, and you're out. I mean, just those little, when you run those type of offense that you dink and dunk, run the ball, dink and dunk, run the ball, not only is it helping your offense stay on the field, it's keeping their offense off the field and keep their defense on the field. So those guys will get tired, like our defense is starting to get tired. Other players are starting to notice. All right, as soon as Dak Prescott came off his 3rd step, his 4th step, he's got the ball out of his hands. Now you're rendering the defensive line useless because they can't get there fast enough. And we don't play tight enough coverage to do that. So, you know, I mean, we also have to adapt as an offense, understanding dink and dunking is not a bad word. It's not a bad phrase. In fact, we were at our best when we do that. Going down the field methodically, slant to AJ, slant to Smitty, hit Dallas Goedert on a little wheel route somewhere. I mean, that's how we can be more successful with our offense. We're not doing that, and our offense is not successful. We're going to have to score because I don't think our defense has enough talent at this point playing together for us to win. It's going to have to be a shootout every week. Yeah,
that's kind of the thing. And that's why, you know, against the 49ers, they kick 2 field goals and you go, uh-oh. Or against the Cowboys, they turn it over early and you go, uh-oh, because you're trying to chase points against these really good teams. I want to get back to what you said about the slow developing plays, because even that 4th and 8, man, was that slow developing, and
right,
they're blitzing you on it. So there's such a small window of when that ball can get out.
Where the side adjustments at?
Yeah.
Everybody had their backs turned going down the field on these long breaking routes. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing because look, I think they are good at hitting the explosives, but you're right. There probably has to be a little bit of balance in there. It's funny because we've harped so much on scheme this year, and one of the things schematically that they haven't done very much is motion. In this game, they actually used some motion. Now, I don't know what it really accomplished, but honestly, it was kind of a good thing to see, because maybe it means that the offensive coaching staff isn't so rigid that they're unwilling to change.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Is that how you read that? Like, I didn't think they accomplished a whole lot.
It caught me off guard when I saw in the fourth quarter AJ go in motion from the right side to the left side, line up in the slot. But then, in the penalty, it was a penalty, but still, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I almost think that's a little encouraging, because it shows that, yes, they're dead last in the league in something, and maybe they're working to correct it. Now, I don't know how you're going to just implement something in week 15 and hope that it helps your offense, but I like that they were willing to try that.
Right.
I want to get your take on something Nick Sirianni was asked about in his press conference on Tuesday. Because the only 3 players on offense that caught a target from Jalen Hurts in that game were A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. And Nick kind of hit on what he's always hit on, was that, our passing offense runs through these 3 guys. But then he also mentioned that the way the Cowboys play defense opens up the opportunity to get the ball to those 3 guys. And I think that's well and good. And I think it will be crazy if they went into a week thinking, well, we got to get Quez the ball or something like that.
That'd be our worst mistake.
Yeah, I get all that. But not one target for anyone else.
And hence, that's why our offense isn't working. You know, if you look at the past 2 weeks, what they did to us was make Jalen go out there, read the defense, and he can read the defense well, but then able to come up and adjust to things as soon as the ball is thrown, go up and make a play. That's what they're doing. They're rushing 4. They're saying, all right, we're going to rely on our offensive line to block your 4 down linemen. What makes them think that that's cool to do? How do you have the audacity to just rush 4 and then, have success with that? That's why they're doing that. They're rushing 4 and they're dropping 7. Come on now. They're rushing 4 and dropping 7. So they have 7 people in coverage, hoping that their defensive line come up and make a play. It's going to be hard for you to go out there and really execute an offense, especially offense you're trying to go down the field when you have 2 high safeties, number one, 2 high safeties who are going to be deeper than the next man. And then you have cornerbacks that are playing deep also. So everything has to develop. And as soon as it gets there, they're there to make a play. That's because they're so far back. They are daring us. They are challenging us to run the ball, and we still don't run it. The reason why we had success last year with big impact plays is because our run game was so substantial that you had to bring that safety down into the box to help with the run. And then it just left you 1 high safety, and now you guys on the outside can win because it's just them one-on-one, or, they're trying to buzz a linebacker out. Our guys are better than those linebackers and safeties, they have them inside the box. Well, they're daring us to run the ball, and we're not running it. That's why they're winning. They're winning on defense. They're dropping 7 and rushing 4. So to me, you got to run them out of that too high safety. You have to run them out of too high safety. If you don't run the ball, they're going to continue doing what they're doing, rushing 4, and Jalen Hurts will have all day sitting back to throw the ball, but they can bracket you from the backside because you got 7 guys out there to cover 3 or 4 guys. I mean, to me, that's easy. That's easy math. I mean, you got 2 high safeties who come up, Buzz, and bracket Smitty, bracket Dallas Goedert, and bracket Smith. It's too easy a defense to allow them to do that. So what do? You run the ball to get them out of that. Make them bring somebody else in the box. Then you can go over with big plays. But until you do that, it's just 2 high safety. That's exactly what they did with Patrick Mahomes and when they had the cheetah. Played 2 high safeties and dared you to run the ball. Big Red said, all right, then you go dare me to run the ball, I'm going to run the ball. They ran the ball consistently, got them out of that, and then they started having success with the cheetah over the top then. We will not be able to run our offense if we don't run them out of that too deep. Mark my words, trust me. Teams are playing too deep on us and, 2 deep safeties and dropping all 7 guys back there. And at this point, they're not going to be open. Your guys are not going to be open.
Yeah, and it makes the margin for error that much smaller. So when you have a big play to AJ over the top and he drops it, well, now all of a sudden you're like, oh,
it's amplified then. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't.
How about that too? That's another fundamental thing. Drops. We dropped a touchdown pass. We dropped big plays. I mean, and I didn't think there was a lack of sincere, like, damn it, I didn't catch it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't see that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I saw it in
like a laissez-faire attitude.
I saw as dejected a Devontae Smith as I think I've ever seen since he's been here. I mean, he just looked awful after that game. And I get it. He had some opportunity. And there were like tough catches early in that game, like ones where he gets clobbered, but plays we're kind of used to seeing him make. And then there was obviously the potential touchdown that, I thought it was a pretty good throw by Jalen.
I mean, and then the pass thrown to Brown, I mean, it looked like it was tipped. It wasn't even tipped. It was in his hands.
He dropped the bucket. Dropped it in the bucket. I actually, what? On the rewatch, Jalen played better than I thought he played.
Yeah, he did.
You put it on. You put some of it on him because he's the quarterback. But man, I thought he was making some pretty good throws.
Yep.
All right. The only other thing from Nick Sirianni that I wanted to bring up, he talked about starting faster. We know they need to do that. He did mention, I asked him about the defense and Sean Desai. Obviously, he said he's confident in Sean Desai. That's why they hired him. They got to get off the field. And in this game, it was a little different because they were letting them into like third and very manageable situations. But all year, third downs have been an issue.
It's been an issue because, just like you said, is third downs is going to be easy because you have a playbook this thick when it's 3rd and 2, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3. When you get back to what they were doing earlier in the season, is making it 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10. That's when the playbook goes from this big to this big. It's a whole lot of plays when you got short yardage going 3rd down because now you have to play the run and the pass. So it's simpler then. But at this point, 1st and 2nd down, especially 1st down, has been our Achilles heel. It was all last year, was the year before. 1st down, we got to stop the run. We got to stop teams from thinking they can do whatever they want to do on 1st down. We got to get some stops. It doesn't even matter if we're in 5-man line. If we're in a 50 front with, 3 big guys over the center and 2 guards. We had Davis, we had Jalen, and we had Fletcher in there in the middle of the defense, and they were still running on us. And that goes back to our fundamentals and understanding you got to be that gap sound. Like my boy Jalen Carter. He's jumping out. He jumped out of the gap. As soon as he jumped out of that gap, the running back ran right in behind him. You know what I'm saying? Right where the gap he was supposed to have a responsibility for, ran right there. And that's a learning thing. He learned from it. You know what I'm saying? He didn't do it anymore. But those little things are compounded because everybody's taking their turn and doing little things. And that's why the defense isn't as successful. The offenses are going out there and balling at this point because of that.
All right, Barrett, let's fix this team. We have a few minutes here on offense. You're getting back into the lab this week. You have a okay Seahawks defense. We'll see how banged up they are. I think Witherspoon is probably going to play, but How would you fix the offense? Pretty simple question. No easy answers, though, huh?
Not easy answers, but fundamentally, I would go to a quicker passer game, get the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands. And with that comes, running RPOs. Bring the RPO back. He's great at making those type of decisions. That's what got him paid. Using that RPO, understanding you got to be quick to read what's going on and using his athleticism. You know what I'm saying? Maybe call him a couple more running plays. It's time, to really get off the pot and really go out there and play dynamically like we know you can play. So put him in better positions, RPOs. And when you go with the RPO game, it's quicker passes, getting the ball out of his hands. Those quicker passes lead to big plays. We see how strong that, A.J. Brown is. Once he catches it, secures it, his run after the catch, he can make some things happen. But we're not doing it because we're trying to go for the big plays down the field. So shorten the passing game up, get the ball out of his hands faster, use his athleticism, and have a shorter running passing game. And the biggest thing, run the ball, because teams are going to definitely keep on playing too high safeties and dropping everybody and telling that defensive line, hey, y'all just rush the passer, make sure he doesn't run. Make sure Jalen Hurts doesn't run. So that's how you fix the offense.
A few things you hit there that I want to bring up a little bit more. Jalen in the run game. We saw some draw plays that were successful against the Cowboys, but in general, he clearly, and I think he's beyond the knee injury, or at least to the point where it's not really hampering him like it was early in the year, but it's still not a massive part of this offense. Now, I'm sure there are 255 million reasons why that might be, but what do you make of that? Because
it's an afterthought, man. It's an afterthought. It's an afterthought.
Why is that? Because I think there are some situations where it really does make sense to run the football with him, or at least do it enough so that it's a threat, so that you're not.
You said it right there. You said it right there.
Yeah, because that was the strength of their run game, and I know they have good offensive linemen, and we think they have good running backs, but the strength of their run game the last couple of years has been the numbers, and the numbers with Jalen as a participant in the run game, that matters, and it helps out quite a bit. Do you think it's something where, if they get in the playoffs, here it is? Can they just turn it on like that?
They can't wait to the playoffs. They got to start doing it right now. And by the way, I watched that game the other night, and the Giants aren't just pushovers. They're not pushovers. They believe in that little quarterback they got right now. Yeah. And the defense is playing pretty well.
Mr. Cutlets to you.
Right.
It's playing pretty well.
So, yeah, I mean, it's they have to turn things around. And number one, you got to make him a factor in the number count. Like you said, most teams, they only threaten the offense with 10 players because the quarterback's all he's going to do is just throw it or hand it off. Well, Jalen has that effect that he can make defend all 11 players. So when you defend all 11 players, somebody has to account for Jalen and his athleticism. And you can't go out there and drop everybody and not require somebody or having some type of resource on Jalen Hurts. You got to put somebody on him, which is taking them out of coverage. You got to do that. So he makes you defend all 11 guys if we use them that way. The running game cannot be an afterthought. You can't just, all right, well, I guess we got to do a run play now. No, the most imposing thing you can do, the most demeaning thing you can do is run the ball on the defense and they can't stop it. I mean, it number one, it tires them out because you got to get up off double teams. You got to get up off the ground. Those things take a toll on the defense. They'd rather you pass the ball on them all day. If you ask any defense player, I'd rather you throw for 400 yards than a run for 150 on you. And they'll tell you, because when you're out there and you're running the rock and you can't do anything about it, that's demoralizing to them. So we used to do that. We used to run the ball and just keep running it. And there's no such thing as a bad run play because at least you're giving them a notion that, all right, they can run the ball. And they know that offensive line is good enough to get to the second level and make big plays. We just don't do it. It's got to be a concerted effort. We just don't do it.
Yeah, they got to do it better, too. I mean, that's a big part of it.
People say that you got to do it better. You can't do it better if you don't do it. You don't do it enough.
We're in a little bit of a chicken or the egg situation here.
Well, it's not. That's just what I'm saying. That's what it's not, though. Conceptually, you have to have in your mind, I'm going to run the ball. That's all it is. I'm going to run the ball. And, it does. Oh, the run play is not working. There's no such thing as a run game not working unless they bring extra defenders. There's no way that they should not be running the ball when they're dropping 7 and only rushing 4. When they got 4, teams aren't even worried about the run. Usually they say, you know what, we're going to pass rush and on our way tackle the run. Mm-hmm. That's disrespectful to an offense. You've got to stop the run first. I'm along the lines of, all right, you got to earn the right to rush the passer, meaning you got to stop the run first. It's an afterthought to teams playing the Eagles right now, and that's their biggest thing. That's worrying me right now because we don't have the character, we don't have the internalized, girth to go out there and just muscle people anymore. You got to be able to do that. So, all it's saying, we didn't run the ball, because we didn't do a success. That's because we didn't try to. And that's the biggest thing.
I don't know the answer to that because who knows? Maybe they run it 30 times and it doesn't work. We won't know.
Never happen. It'll never happen. It'll never happen. If you run the ball 30 times, you're going to get some, you're going to get some great results from that. Trust me.
I love the offensive lineman in you coming out because I know all those guys in that team meeting room are going all 5. I guarantee it. All 5 offensive linemen going, let's run the ball.
Let's run it.
They want to do it.
I mean, you got 360, and you got 380, 6'8", and 6'6" on that left side. Dickerson, Mailata, let them just fall forward, and you got 5 yards. You know what I'm saying?
You would think so, but
right.
I'll tell you what, it hasn't been there the way I'm used to seeing it.
That's because we don't do it enough. I'm just telling you, we just don't do it enough.
Okay. Maybe. I'm a little concerned about the results in the limited sample size. Maybe you're right that if it's a greater sample size, it would work better, but we'll see about that.
So. I hope we'll see. I hope we'll see.
One more thing on offense, and this is something that I really don't get. I haven't understood it during Nick Sirianni's 3 years here. Why is this not a better screen team?
Wow.
I know that screens are hard plays in general, right? Because the timing, like one guy screws up a screen, the whole thing is done. But
and you would think with the offensive line, the way they block on the second level, how good of athletes they are.
You have yak guys, you have AJ and Devontae and Dallas Goedert, DeAndre Swift. Like, what am I missing here?
And it's crazy because you run screens on teams that rush the passer. And that's all people do with us. They just rush the passer. So you should be able to get up and get out on people after that defensive line gets up the field. It should be just wide open after that. You're right. I mean, this team should be the perfect screen team because you're able to run screens because the defensive line's getting up the field and everybody's looking at the pass. And, it should be a great screen team. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. Like when I played in Pittsburgh, we had a horrible screen team. Why? Because everybody was scared to death of our run game. That they wouldn't rush the passer like that. They would sit there and make sure they're blocking the run, so
it seems like when they try to run it, it's like the timing is just wonky. But then you watch like the 49ers last week and they ran that one tunnel screen to Kittle and you're going, holy cow, this looks different.
Right. Way different, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But also you got to have some guys that want to block. Deebo Samuels wants to block. Even Brandon Ayuk could go out there and block a little bit. But you're right, man. You're right. We should be screening a lot better than we are. I hadn't thought about it, but you're absolutely right.
All right, I got you for another 4 minutes. Let's fix this defense that's been historically bad over the last 3 weeks.
All right.
In a few minutes. What do you got here?
All right, you got your picture and pencil and paper?
You got a time machine first off to get some of these guys in the primes of their career?
Right. I think that's the biggest thing, man. I don't know. I mean, teams have figured out how to defend us, how our defense is trying to defend them, and they're getting the ball out of their hands so fast that it's hard for our defensive line to make it. We are built well in the trenches. Our offensive line, defensive line can rush the passer, but they're just not getting opportunities because as soon as those quarterbacks get that plant leg, Purdy, Dak Prescott, as soon as that plant leg gets back there, they're throwing it. They're getting it out their hands. And a quick pass game because we just don't play tight enough on the wide receivers out there. We don't get up and bump and run them. We don't try to reroute them. And I think that's because we just don't have the personnel to do that now. I used to think that Bradbury and Slay, that's their game. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Bradbury being a big, long, kind of cornerback, get his hands on people, reroute them, or, get on them, cover them up real fast so they can't let that ball get out their hands that fast.
I'll tell you what, Bradbury tries to bump and he misses.
Yes. But it doesn't make a difference because on that play, went down to the 1, he went up and he was in deep. And, I forget the receiver's name, number 3. What's his name? I forget his name. Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
Cooks just ran right by him.
Yep.
And that's the speed. But, he was actually in pretty good position. And he was actually rerouting the receiver. Well, not rerouting the receiver, but he was going to his help. He was letting the receiver go to his help. Nobody was there fast enough. So it's kind of tough. But, I just don't see the same, not necessarily athleticism, but I don't see the same attitude as I saw before. They're not playing with attitudes. They're not playing with that,
it's tough to have attitude when you're slow.
Well,
like I do. I think they have a speed issue. They don't have fast players on the back end.
So you think that's why they're starting to play the younger guys a little more? I
think it's partially that. I think they're like, we got to get some athleticism out here.
Caley played a lot this last game, more than I've seen him play.
Caley played 1 snap coming into this game, and then he plays like 22. And look, it didn't always go well, but I kind of get it. I think Sidney Brown, there's some positive things on tape, but it's kind of like what we thought with him. Like there's going to be some big plays, and there's probably going to be goof ups.
Yep.
And it kind of makes me wonder, like, why in the heck wouldn't you get this out of the way early in the season? Like play him early in the season so that when you get into December, he's more ready for the expanded snaps. I know he had the injury earlier in the year, but that's kind of what you see with. I think Slay's playing fine. Honestly, I know that people are down on Slay. I think he's been fine. But like it's not like there are other problems. Bayard has not been as advertised.
And that's so shocking to me. And and it shouldn't be because why were they so ready to get rid of Bayard?
I think Zach Cunningham's been all right. I thought he played a pretty good game.
Mm-hmm.
Nicholas Morrow, I think it's probably time to see what Shaq Leonard can really do with some expanded snaps.
No, I ain't gonna say that. I was gonna say Ellis, Christian Ellis. I think he's gonna be a pretty good player. Probably later on in his career, he's gonna be a pretty good player.
Maybe. But even if not, they still goofed up because they wanted to get him back on the practice squad.
Yeah, they did. And
they have Albert Okwuegbunam for some reason.
What is that? Play. Yeah, exactly.
Crazy to me. All right. Well, thank you, Barrett. I appreciate your time.
I'm not Rube. I'm Barrett. Okay, God, just you guys know.
I appreciate it, Barrett. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, bro.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. All right, we're back on the Eagle Eye Podcast. Thanks to Barrett for taking some time. It was good to chop it up with him a little bit. A lot of that is what we do in the newsroom. Me, Barrett, Rube, all the guys, we'll just kind of break some stuff down and have some fun. So appreciate the time from Barrett. Hopefully we'll be back before you know it. But I do want to talk a little bit about Nick Sirianni because I had a chance to be on the call with him on Tuesday, and I was really curious to see what kind of mood he was in, what he was going to say, what stances he would take. And there have been some times a day after game presser. I know this is 2 days after, but there are some times where you can tell he hasn't slept or he's moody. So I was really curious to see what version of Nick Sirianni would show up on this Tuesday. And it was kind of a firm Sirianni. I thought he was he gave some pushback on certain things, a little defiant. He mentioned that they're 10-3. They still control their own destiny, which isn't exactly true. They can't control their own destiny to get the 1 seed, but I get his point. If they win out, they'd be the winners of the NFC East. So I was curious to see it, and I thought he hit a pretty good tone. And I'm curious to see what his players think of what Nick Sirianni does this week, because I wrote about this on NBCSportsPhilly.com that this is an interesting spot for the head coach because they're facing adversity really for the first time since he was a rookie head coach back in 2021. And I brought up the Roots speech in my column because that was really the most adversity he's seen as a head coach, because last year, the only adversity they really had was when Jalen injured that shoulder and he missed a couple games. But I mean, they pretty much were a special team all of last season. This year, even before these last two awful losses, this team has not been up to the standard. So I think back to 2021, and I thought he handled that so well. He hit the Roots speech, which sounded hokey to the rest of us, and people laughed at him when he said flower instead of plant, by the way. In the team meeting, he called it a plant would grow from the roots, and then he mistakenly said flower when he got in front of us in the media. But whatever he said, it worked, right? Like, that team turned around from a 2-5 start. They get to the playoffs. We know they lose in that playoff game, but they exceeded expectations. The difference this year is that the expectations are so monumentally high after this team goes to the Super Bowl that I think it does make things a lot tougher when you're kind of playing from, the underdog card is so easy to play. No one believes in us. It was what Doug Peterson did so well. It's kind of what Nick Sirianni was able to do in 2021 and a little bit in 2022 at the beginning of that season. It's very different when you have the target on your back the way the Eagles have had this year. I think that's a much more difficult place to come from as a team. So now, no question, there's adversity. Barrett brought up the report from Derek Gunn about some questions about the offense from inside the building. So I think that's kind of natural. We start to see these things, but Nick has been so good in his time as the head coach here about pushing all the right buttons with his team, having the right message. So this is a weird spot for him to be in, and I don't know how he's going to handle it. I think he's put thought into this week, and he'll come into his team meeting with things he wants to hit on. And obviously this is not talking about schematic stuff, because there are things offensively he can do better. There are things Sean Desai defensively can do better. But a big part of his role as the head coach is to make sure this team doesn't fracture, to make sure that there isn't finger pointing, to make sure that people are still buying in to whatever he's doing. And that really starts in the building. And I think that's why he lays this foundation of connection, which we kind of roll our eyes at quite a bit, but it buys him a little bit more leash. If this is Chip Kelly in this situation, he probably doesn't have the same leash. He might not have the same level of buy-in. So if you're an Eagles fan, I think that's where you hope that the foundation Nick has laid will help out when the times do get tough. And we'll see, because I think they had the ability to win these next 4 games. I really do, but they're not easy. I know that Seattle is free falling a little bit right now. They've lost 4 in a row, but this is a team that gave the Cowboys a fit not too long ago. And then I know I was talking about it with Barrett, but Tommy DeVito is like giving the Giants some life. That's not a pushover game. And Jonathan Gannon, say what you want about him and his team, he'll be motivated coming in here to play the Eagles. So it's not easy, but it is the easiest schedule of these contenders. And if they can kind of keep this together, I don't think you're going to fix all the issues. I think this team has significant problems on both sides of the football that they might just not have time to figure out, because some of them on defense might be talent. I think on offense, they're going to have to carry the load here. So really curious to see what it looks like. We'll be back with you later in the week. If you do us a favor, we really would appreciate subscribe and like wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, please click that like button, subscribe there as well. For Barrett, I'm Dave Zangaro. We appreciate the time. We'll talk to you soon. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan.